Hey, everybody. Great to see all y'all out there in Son of Sam land. Hey, we got a really good little pop-up for you today. I just literally put this one together in the last 15, 20 minutes. The inspiration came in for this morning. Oh, people are saying they can't hear me. Hold on. Give me a second. Check one. People hear me over here? I can hear him fine. All right, I'm going to go with everybody can hear me fine. All right, cool. So, good. Lydia Lily can hear me now. What's up, Lydia? Great to see you. Great to see all y'all out there. So, of course, why am I doing this today? Well, listen. Every now and then a comment so stupid comes into my inbox, my desk, whatever you want to call it, that the educator, the teacher, the person who wants to actually help people out by giving them knowledge, by giving them information, like true and accurate information, comes out. And so today was one of those days. And so this comment came in, and again, today's just going to be a pretty quick pop-up. It's not going to be a very long and involved show. I don't want to get too into the weeds here with this one, and it doesn't really require it. This is just one of these things that I've been doing lately where I can't let certain things go unanswered. If people want to call me a process member, that's fine. If they want to say my dad was Operation Mockingbird, hey, you're a total lunatic, but hey, you can believe in the tooth fairy and Santa Claus as well. I mean, that's fine with me, whatever you want to do. But sometimes people say something just so ignorant, so boneheaded, so downright stupid about the Son of Sam case that I just have to do these shows. I just have to do it. And so today was one of those days. All right, so we're just going to get into it today. And what's the topic today? How David Berkowitz shot Carl Denaro. Yes, I know that a lot of people out there, the Moristas of the world, they're really disappointed at the fact that this is true, that David Berkowitz shot Carl Denaro. They're actually sad about this. They want to believe that Berkowitz was some patsy, some schlub, some innocent victim of larger forces around him. This is somebody who took the fall for a wider group, and so on and so forth. But the simple fact is, Disco Dave did all the shootings alone, as we just learned, even though we've had our video series for 2 years and we saying the same thing. But as we just learned in Michael Caparelli's book, Berkowitz, in his latest and most recent interview, confessed to doing it all alone. I mean, that's the end of it. That's put a fork in it, guys. It's done. But still today, this comment came across my desk, and well, let's just get into it, shall we? All right, so here we are. So this was the inspiration for this show, and I know that yesterday's show, by the way, the show on the sigil, the Son of Sam symbol, I know that it had a massive impact. Mainly because all the trolls came out in force this morning, telling me how wrong I am, telling me I'm a gardener, telling me that I'm just a lowly botanist and a landscaper, and what could I possibly know? All the usual suspects came out. I mean, it's kind of been a fun day when I actually paid some attention to it. But here's the inspiration for this show. So this is a guy named Tay 9180, and now Tay 9180 has been not a thorn in my side, because I honestly couldn't care less about this guy, quite honestly. But he's been around since day one, and I guess he was originally a fan when we were Maury Terry, telling the Maury Terry stories. But he's one of these people that has come out and just hates my guts, right? Mainly because I'm going against his religion. I'm going against the cult of Maury Terry. This is a Morista. This is a person who actually thinks Maury Terry had integrity and was a dogged investigator and would never lie, and all that kind of stuff that we've proven a million times that he did. So this is absolute gold. I've never had quite such a dumb comment and so easily disproven. Let's just read it. Tay 9180, 12 hours ago. So this was overnight. This last this comment. And this was put on I forget exactly what video. I'll find it eventually and I'll put it in the comment section. So the problem with your nitpicking tendencies is that David Berkowitz, now I highlighted this, okay, because this is the money shot here, that David Berkowitz initially told the police that he used both of his hands when he was supposedly shooting at Carl Denaro. But you won't mention that because it creates a contradiction between the agenda you are driving and the actual statements that Berkowitz made. The one-hand claim was a revised confession by Berkowitz, and it is these discrepancies that make it implausible that he was behind the shooting of Carl Denaro. But then again, Manny, you are just a mere gardener who was pulled out of the gutter by the same book written by Maury Terry that you are now defiling. It is as if your messy hair is also a true reflection of the situation inside your head. In other words, it wouldn't be a far-fetched deduction that your brain, assuming you have one, although it appears not to be the case, is haphazardly positioned topsy-turvy like Berkowitz's apartment on the night that he was captured. Now, first of all, you're dissing my hair, Tay. Carrie Butterworth, are you in the she does my hair? This is a woman who does the hair to the stars. Okay, yeah, you're now you're going to be dissing Carrie Butterworth. Tay, come on, man. You know you're actually jealous of my hair. Come on, give me a break. So anyway, he says here that Berkowitz initially told police that he used both of his hands when he was supposedly shooting at Carl Denaro. All right. So now we have to deal with this whole issue of who shot Carl, right? And I've only talked about this a gazillion times in other videos, but it always kind of gets lost within other topics. So I figured I'd make its own video today. And I actually hope Carl Denaro sees this because he needs to learn this too. Apparently, I mean, unless he's had a change of heart, this guy is going down with the ship. I give him credit. He's loyal to Maury Terry, guy who used him like a pack animal to give his sham investigation of Sheen of credibility. See, I have a victim who believes me. Therefore, I'm correct. All right, let's see what people have to say about this. Okay, so here's Morys words, right, about Carl's shooting, and this is in the epilogue of The Ultimate Evil, and this is allegedly Berkowitz saying, answering his questions. Although we all know in reality that Maury fed Berkowitz the information. Berkowitz now is saying that he felt intense pressure to answer these questions in the way that Maury expected. And of course, we remember my my theory, my hypothesis that Maury was paying off Berkowitz, that he was giving him prison commissary, that he was paying for food, that he was paying for writing supplies. Hell, I'm even going to go out on a limb and make a wild prediction here. I predict that one day you're all going to find out that Maury even bought Berkowitz a typewriter. Okay? So anyway, Carl Denaro, a woman shot him. There were several of us there that night, Berkowitz said, adding that 3 of those several conspirators were women. The shooter is believed to be one of 2 prime suspects. All right, so let's see what Carl has to say, because in Carl's book, which I have on the cover here of the of the thumbnail today, The Son of Sam and Me, Carl Denaro with Brian Whitney, The Truth About Why I Wasn't Shot by David Berkowitz. Okay, well, unfortunately, Carl, you were shot by David Berkowitz. I really hope you actually get peace. I mean, seriously, as a victim, I hope you get the peace that you need and the closure that you need. Because if you still believe Maury's lies, you're dumber than I thought you were. All right, so Carl's words. The second attack, October 23rd, 76, was when me and Rosemary Keenan were shot at on 159th Street and 33rd Avenue in Flushing. There were no witnesses to the attack, so there's very little information available outside of what the NYPD gathered from me and Rosemary. Long after The Ultimate Evil was published, it was learned by Maury and myself that a relative of Wheat Carr was house-sitting 2 blocks away from the shooting. Although there is not conclusive proof, it is believed that the relative, Eileen Dorfler, hosted a party that night, and some of the attendees were somehow involved in the crime. At the time, her son Glenn Dorfler was 15 years old. 30 years later, he passed away, and Wheat Carr posted her condolences on the funeral website, indicating that Glenn was her nephew. I'm going to just make an editorial comment. So Wheat Carr is allowed to have a nephew named Glenn Dorfler. And how do we know that Eileen Dorfler was hosting a party? Who told this to Maury? How do we know that Eileen Dorfler even lives in this neighborhood and it's the same Eileen Dorfler? I mean, I guess it's the relative, her son. I guess it was the funeral website. But again, who cares? Where's any conclusive proof of this? I mean, I can say someone was at a party too. I can say it all day long. Yeah, Carl, someone was at a party. Yeah, the person was related to Wheat Carr, and that's how these people put everything together. Oh, a relative of Wheat Carr was at a party 2 blocks away, allegedly. Told by Maury Terry. So therefore, guilty. 30 years later, he passed away. Okay, in another twist, Glenn apparently worked for James Faulkner in a local Yonkers TV studio. That's not a twist. If that was Wheat Carr's nephew, Glenn Dorfler, Wheat Carr was friends with Jim Faulkner. I mean, who cares? Why is this even in this book? At one point, James Faulkner purchased the Carr family residence for below market value. And in 1993, in a televised interview with Maury, David Berkowitz stated that although he was at the scene of the attack, he was not the shooter. When pressed by Maury, he admitted that the shooter was a woman. Originally, Maury told me the shooter was known as a witch named Wendy. In occult circles, she was known as Big-Breasted Wendy. She was also a regular visitor customer at the Magical Child Occult Shop in Greenwich Village. About 5 years before Maury's death, he sent me an email saying that the woman who shot me was not Wendy, but was actually a woman named Amy. To this day, I am not sure if a woman that shot me was Wendy or Amy. Now, first of all, that's just freaking cruel because, first of all, David Berkowitz shot Carl Denaro. We're gonna prove it today. We don't even need to prove it. I mean, he admitted it. He pleaded guilty to it. He's told the same story all these years, except to Maury Terry. And again, remember, he felt pressure for this guy. Think about how cruel that is. Maury was stringing Carl along for years. Hey, Carl, it was Big-Breasted Wendy. First of all, do you really believe that was her real nickname? Big-Breasted Wendy? Who uses terminology like that? Okay. Second of all, then Maury comes out 5 years later and says it wasn't Big-Breasted Wendy, it was Amy. I mean, that's just straight up cruel. I mean, it almost as cruel as what he did to Nasa Moskowitz, fooling her into thinking that Berkowitz didn't kill her daughter. Thank God for Nasa, she wised up. So anyway, let's get back to the thing here because this is the money shot. Okay, even with a lack of eyewitnesses to the shooting, a bit of circumstantial evidence does exist. The shooter's aim was wild. 4 bullets were fired. 1 piece of shrapnel hit the speedometer of the Volkswagen. 1 apparently went through the back window and out the front window, blowing the windows out. The 3rd bullet hit the roof of the car, which slowed the bullet down. It eventually found its resting spot in the back of my skull. After the attack, Rosemary's Volkswagen was towed to the police garage for further investigation. A week later, when NYPD returned Rosemary's car, she went to clean it out and pulled a blanket from the rear wheel well of the Beetle, and lo and behold, a bullet fell out. She immediately gave her father, Detective Red Keenan, the bullet, and it was sent to ballistics. I'm not really sure which bullet determined it was a .44 caliber, that bullet or the bullet the doctors took out of my skull, but regardless, it was one of them. In the early 1990s, I met with Detective Joe Quirk, who worked in ballistics in the NYPD. He told me that he worked on my case, and based on his findings, he reported that it was either a 90-pound weakling or a woman who fired the shots in my attack. In the 1993 interview, when David Berkowitz admitted to Maury Terry that a woman shot me, the detective's statements was corroborated. The detective also told me during our conversation that the ballistics report he worked on was missing from the NYPD files. Okay, another missing file. How convenient. And also, the whole point of this whole missive and screed right here was to explain the wildness of the shooting. Remember, the shooter's aim was wild. Okay? That's the whole deal here. The shooter's aim was wild. All right, so now let's read Berkowitz's confession of shooting Carl Denaro. Okay, so it's not very long. And it's also going to Tay, if you're watching this, you should really pay attention. Question. Now, when you were driving around, tell us what you did that night. I just drove around. Before that, I don't remember nothing significant happening. I drove up the street and saw them in the car. Who? That would be Mr. Denaro and Mrs. Kegnan. Now, at the time, did you know their names? No. When you first saw them, were you behind them or in front of them? Behind. At this particular time, did you know whether it was two girls or men or what? I thought it was a girl and a man. And were they sitting in the car? I don't know. I just saw it. It was dark. I saw figures in the car. How did you approach the car? I pulled around the corner and parked my car and got out and just walked up behind the car. And which side of the car did you approach? The passenger's side. And tell us what you did. I pulled out the .44 and opened fire. How many shots did you fire? 5. And how many hands did you use? 1 hand. And can you tell us what position you took at that time? I stood up, upright, and I just emptied the gun in the car. Now, was the window to which you fired the gun open or closed? All the windows were closed. So again, 1 hand. So here is again myth versus reality. So Tay, I'm going to read it again. And he's writing this to me. The problem with your nitpicking tendencies is that David Berkowitz initially told the police that he used both of his hands when he was supposedly shooting at Carl Denaro. But you won't mention that because it creates a contradiction between the agenda you are driving and the actual statements Berkowitz made. So, Tay, this is the initial statement that Berkowitz made. I mean, this is the confession. This is the night that he got arrested. This was the first statement that he ever made to the police about how many hands. They specifically asked him, how many hands did you use? And why did they do that? Because of the wildness of the shooting, I have no doubt. 1 hand. So Tay actually believes that Berkowitz told the police that he used both of his hands. The reality is that Berkowitz says here he used 1 hand. This was known on August 11th, 1977. So you see what's going on here. What the Morista does, right, is that they actually believe fantasies. They don't actually do any of this research that we do. They would never even deign to go into the Queen's DA files and read the confessions, the police reports, the ballistics reports, everything, right? That we've used in this video series to prove that Maury Terry was just an abject liar with malice aforethought. So here you have Tay spewing what he thinks is the truth, but it's actually not the truth. It has no basis in reality whatsoever. And then he believes that truth, right? And then makes up a whole scenario about how I won't mention it because it creates a contradiction between the agenda I'm driving and the actual statements Berkowitz made. First of all, the agenda that I'm driving is the truth. It is Son of Sam truth. I don't have any other agenda. And that should be proven by the simple fact that I started this video series out in March of 2021 as a total Maury Terry fan. I believed in the absolute, like I was a cult member. I believed the absolute veracity and truth of the ultimate evil. Right? But I wasn't a person like Tay who like believed things that weren't real and then unable to actually do research and then update my operating system. So again, Berkowitz used 1 hand. Okay. Everybody's got their panties in a twist about the shooter's aim was wild. It was a 90-pound weakling or a woman because the bullets were all over the place and the shooting was wild. Surely Berkowitz could have shot his .44 with precise aim because he was an expert marksman and all this kind of stuff. Well, we're just seeing now that he, despite what Tay thinks, that he shot Carl Denaro with 1 hand. When you shoot a .44, now I'm not the expert of this. We're going to go over this hopefully with my man Mil Serp when we do our video on the .44. when you shoot a 44, my understanding is it's got an incredible kick. And if you shoot it with one hand, especially if you're apprehensive about the whole thing, and apprehension is the key phrase here. Okay, I'm not just coming up with that term. It's apprehension. Especially when you're apprehensive and you have one hand, it's going to kick. It's going to be a wild shot. Okay. So, all right. So Berkowitz said he used one hand, right? Does Berkowitz mention this anywhere else? This whole issue of using one hand. Okay. Well, he mentioned it here. This is a letter to Abrahamson. The second job was the Denaro Keenan one. Both of them were sitting in a red Volkswagen and making out. Now, the Volkswagen was blue. It was 3:30 in the morning, 2 in the morning, under sodium lamps. I can excuse him not remembering red or blue, okay? This was my second murder attempt with my 44. I had approached from the rear of the car, walked up to the passenger side window, and opened fire. I was more frightened than they were. Only one bullet struck the young man, and he really wasn't the intended target. I had fired with one hand and wildly. Boy, did I mess up. But really, I was very nervous. So right here, it's like, dude, 1977, he said he used one hand. 1979, he's saying he used one hand, and he's adding to it. Not only is he basically giving the same exact scenario here, he approached from the rear of the car, walked to the passenger side window. It's the exact same thing as in his confession. He says he was very nervous and he had fired wildly. So Carl, Tay, there's your answer. Berkowitz used one hand and he fired wildly. That's why you think it was a woman. That's why Maury Terry was able to manipulate you into thinking it was a woman. Because Maury Terry simply didn't tell you any of this stuff here. He knew it. He had these letters. He knew all this stuff in 1979. He just thought so little of you that he didn't tell you this. He just thought you were a schmuck, treated you like one. Carl didn't realize that I was actually one of the best friends he could have had in this business. So here we go. Another thing here from the Abramson letters. I'm no longer pronouncing it Abrahamson. It's Abramson. Why did I shoot with one hand and when I missed? Why was I frustrated, you ask? Well, the best answer that I could give is a 50-50 one. I wanted to take a life, yet I wanted to spare a life. I felt that I had to kill someone. I wanted to, and I didn't want to. I spent hundreds of dollars fixing my car up, putting it in perfect working order for this event or events. Oh, by the way, remember how Maury Terry said the car needed a tune-up and it wouldn't drive if he gunned the engine? Well, this is a contradiction of that, okay, for those of you who know that book like I do. I spent a great deal of money in gas and oil. I purchased other guns before my 44 caliber revolver, a shotgun and a 45 caliber rifle. Already cost me almost $500. Plus, I bought ammo and cleaning materials. Lastly, I spent a great many hours driving in search of victims. No, I knew that I was going to commit the crimes that I set out to do. By the way, we got a lot of good names, a lot of new names here in the chat. We got Ricky, who I've never seen before. We got Mr. Obvious, John XXX. So welcome, everybody. Great to see you. And so Paul Hart, the great Lieutenant Paul Hart today, found this amazing article that was written the next day after the arrest. All Carl Denaro had to do, all of these 45 years since his shooting, 46 years, is look at the New York Times from the day after the arrest, because it basically tells him exactly what he wanted to hear. So let's read this. This is actually a good article, so we're going to read this together. The suspect is quoted on Killings. It was a command. I had a sign. For more than 1 year, I had been hoping for one thing, a chance to talk to the son of Sam, a chance to ask him why, said Detective Gerald Shevlin. He was part of the Special Homicide Task Force that had conducted the search for the 44 caliber killer, the largest manhunt in New York City history. At a little after 2 o'clock yesterday morning, Detective Shevlin had his chance. 10 detectives, officers who had been assigned to the task force headed by Inspector Timothy Dowd since its formation after the 44 caliber killer claimed his 4th and 5th murder victims in April, crowded into room 1312 in police headquarters, and for 1 half hour fired every question we could think of at the 24-year-old suspect, David Berkowitz of Yonkers. From the beginning, I had just wanted 10 minutes with him in a motel room so I could find out about the guy I'd been hunting for 6 months, Detective Shevlin said. Room 1312 became our motel room. We went in there and wrapped up all the loose ends. Berkowitz was very cooperative, said Sergeant Joseph Coffey, who, along with Sergeant Richard Conlon, was directing the questioning. He was talkative and calm and answered whatever we asked. It was a command. But as task force members formed a semicircle around the suspect seated in the chief of detectives' office, an orderly interrogation was abandoned as detectives eagerly tried to find out the answers to questions they had been pondering for more than a year. Why? Why did you kill them? A detective asked the suspect. It was a command, a detective reported, Mr. Berkowitz as responding. I had a sign and I followed it. Sam told me what to do and I did it. Sam, the 24-year-old postal worker, explained in a passive voice, is Sam Carr, a neighbor in Yonkers, who really is a man who lived 6,000 years ago. I got the message through his dog, Mr. Berkowitz said. He told me to kill. Sam is the devil. Mr. Carr is a neighbor whose dog Mr. Berkowitz is accused of having shot. At this point in the interrogation, some of the detectives expressed doubt that they were questioning the right man. But, said a detective, when we asked him about the letter he left after the murder of Valentina Suriani, he knew things that only Sam could have known. The suspect was asked how the letter was signed. The monster, he responded. What did you call yourself in the note? The chubby behemoth. Did you say anything about queens? I wrote that the Queens girls are prettier. Hours later, Inspector Dowd, the commander of the task force, explained the questioning on the ladder as detectives gathered around the desk turned into a bar in the chief of detectives' office. It's because we always knew tonight would come that I never released that first letter to the press, he said. Earlier, the detectives had Mr. Berkowitz reconstruct each of the 44 caliber killer's 8 attacks. The suspects, according to the officers at the interrogation, said he was out driving every night since last July looking for a sign to kill. The situation would be perfect, the suspect was quoted as having said. I would find a parking place for my car right away. It was things like that which convinced me it was commanded. Then when I got a calling, he said, I went looking for a spot. Berkowitz, who said that a buddy in Houston had bought the gun for him, reportedly told the police he had the Charter Arms Bulldog revolver, the 44 caliber weapon the police say was used as the murder weapon, for about a month before the first shooting. As the suspect detailed the attacks, the police learned that many of the theories and even a few aspects of the investigation they had accepted as facts were unsubstantiated. For example, according to detectives, Berkowitz made the following statements. Now, Carl and Tay, listen up. He fired one-handed for the first 3 attacks, not in the two-hand combat style position as police believed. I just want to add that Carl's was the second attack. Okay. So he was part of that first 3. On at least 2 occasions, he fired 5 times, emptying the 44 caliber revolver. He did not keep one bullet in the chamber, as the police believed. He never went inside a discotheque. He never wore a wig. The attacks were totally random. His targets were always the young girls. He insisted he was never jilted by a girlfriend. His only explanation for the attacks was that he was commanded. So anyway, the rest of this doesn't really need to be read. I'll put this on my Twitter because it's a great article. But we're just dealing with the one-handed thing. So we have Berkowitz saying in his confession, how many hands did you use? One hand, despite what Tay thinks here, that he told him that it was 2 hands. The reality is he used one hand. In his letters to Abrahamson, he said 1 hand. He was very nervous. 1 hand, right? 1 hand. Okay, I'm repeating this a lot because I need people to understand this. I had fired with 1 hand and wildly. Okay, so I'm sorry, Moristas. I'm sorry, those of you who are somehow still invested in this stupid claptrap theory that Berkowitz had help and that he was part of an international cult that involved Bill Mentzer's Manson too, and that he was partying with Roy Cohn in his mansion in Connecticut, and that he went to a meeting at Mr. Real Estate's house, who was now Carlton Gajusek, even though before it was Alfred Hunt Howell, and before that it was Donovan, and that they made up the Son of Sam attacks, and that he only did two of them because the Bronx was his territory, and it was Jerry Berg and Barry Dosenko who came out to do Stacy Moskowitz, and it was Manson too who did Christine Freund, and it was Wheat Carr who shot Virginia Voskerichian. I know that like this comforts you. I don't know why they would comfort you. It's kind of a sick world you live in. You guys live in this weird world of fantasy, really. It's a fantasy world of snuff films, cults, child pornography, child trafficking rings, Berkowitz hanging out with Roy Cohn. I mean, just really crazy stuff. And when you know the personalities who brought it to you, Maury Terry, the drunkard, Detective Chinati, the guy who thought he was the Pope and whose gun was taken away because he threatened to kill the Pope in 1980, 1981. And that's why they took his gun away. The guy was insane. And then, of course, Mayor Boots, his honor, James Rothstein, who's been everywhere in the world. He was involved with Watergate. He was involved in the JFK. He was behind the communist Iron Curtain. He was he was involved in the child trafficking rings investigating. He knew all about the Son of Sam case, even though he admitted to me, and I have it on tape, that he didn't investigate Son of Sam. I should do a review of Jim Rothstein's book called The Way It Was. Although I'm not really into elder abuse, it's like not my thing. I like Rothstein personally. Will be the first to tell you the guy doesn't know jack shit about Son of Sam. I mean, you had total jack-offs like Ed Opperman. They actually think they're authorities on Son of Sam because they spoke to Jim Rothstein. I mean, are you kidding me? So anyway, my hope after today is that some of you more sane Moristas, people who might be on the fence, right, who might be realizing with our video series and now with Mike Caparelli's book that, maybe you were sold a bill of goods, that maybe things aren't all that they seem in Son of Sam land, that maybe there was no cult. I'm hoping that I reach you, but I just want to say to Tay out there that, well, listen, you made a dumb comment to me today. You felt the need to make fun of my hair, dissing my hairdresser, Carrie Butterworth. You called me dumb, said I had no brain. So I had to school you. All right. I had to show you not only how just negative and low vibration you are, but really how ignorant you are as well. And so I've shown you. Okay. Now, the question that I have is, are you going to learn from it? Take care, everybody. Thank you.